wanted to hear Trump small. I just want to hear.
Okay,
just give me 5 minutes of Trump.
Oh, 5 minutes?
No, 3 minutes.
2 minutes.
No, 4 minutes.
2 minutes.
I just want to hear. I want to hear.
You want to hear him?
Yeah, I want to hear him.
Go ahead.
If you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So 67%, I think you can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance of standing. Fortunately, we came armed with a little smaller chart. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less, so how can anybody be upset? They will be, because we never charge anybody anything, but now we're going to charge. European Union, they're very tough, very, very tough traders. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff. Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it. Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company. Mr. Wei, of one of the great companies of the world, actually. They're coming in from Taiwan, and they're going to build one of the biggest plants in the world, maybe the biggest for that. But 64%, we're going to charge them 32%. Japan, very, very tough, great people. And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that Oval Office, right over there, right behind the Resolute desk or whichever desk they chose. Japan, 46%. They would charge us 46%, and much higher for certain items like cars, little items like cars. 46%, we're charging them 24%. India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades, and it was only 7 years ago when I came in, we started with China charge them. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China in tariffs, and they understood, honestly. President Xi understood. He said, look, I understand, and the other countries, and they all understand. We're going to have to go through a little tough love, maybe, but they all understand. They were ripping us off, and they understood it. Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe. He was a fantastic man. He was unfortunately taken from us, assassination. But I went to him and I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. A trade is not fair. And he said, I know that. And he was a great gentleman. He was a fantastic man, but he understood immediately what I was talking about. I said, Shinzo, we have to do something. He said, I know that. And we worked out a deal, and it would have been a much better deal, but frankly, there were many years left on the deal that was made previous to my getting there, but it was something. If you look at Switzerland, 61% to 31%. Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. Oh, look at Cambodia, 97%. We're going to bring it down to 49. They made a fortune with the United States of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. We're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
So this is the leader of the free world. I tell people that sometimes history is unfolding right in front of your eyes, but because you live in it, you don't know. But I'm telling you this, that 2025, I think in terms of economic history, is a very significant year. I'll give you an example. 1945 is a very significant year because that was a year after the World War. That was a year the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is now the World Bank, was set up, Bretton Woods. So the current world order, into which all of us were born and that we live, was set up in 1945. Okay. And I have this feeling that Mr. Trump actually wants to change that. He wants to. And of course, the basis of that arrangement was that US allies are Europe, and they would essentially, using the IMF and the World Bank, international capital, essentially control the world. So the OECD countries are mostly from the Western Hemisphere. Of course, China and Russia have never agreed to this. So there's been a long drawn battle. Of course, China started waking up in the 70s, and you can say that it was in the 90s that they really woke up. Japan in the 90s as well. So the point I'm trying to make is that I believe that this tariff thing, even though it sounds jocular, it's a very serious thing. Because not only, we shouldn't look at the tariff in isolation, we should also look at Ukraine and Russia. The whole basis of Atlantic cooperation has been North America and Europe as a security and defense alliance. So in addition to just economic cooperation, there's also security cooperation, because Russia was the big bad wolf essentially after the Cold War. Now, America's views on the Ukraine and Russia, and the president of US's relationship with the Russian president, and how it's redefining that, puts NATO in a very difficult position. I don't think NATO as an organization is going to exist anymore. It's more like the Europeans have to find their own security, because the American security is basically not going to prioritize what the Europeans consider to be their priority with Russia.
I mean, Trump has said as much. That
That's what I'm saying.
NATO are not pulling their weight.
So what I'm trying to say is that this hunch I have around history being rewritten is not just on the tariffs. So there's the whole the breakdown of the traditional North Atlantic alliance between Europe and North America. All right, and now the tariffs are the second layer of that. So I'm saying that as students of history, we should watch this very carefully, because there's going to be more. Because if you listen to his rhetoric, he's very determined to rewrite global history. And a lot of people feel like, oh, he's just being Trump. I think it's going to have very severe consequences. We could actually end up in a recession. Give me 2 seconds. Why do I say this? In 2022, we had a major challenge with global inflation. And once inflation in the US rises, everywhere else suffers. So all of us suffered inflation. Indeed, e-levy and COVID, and e-levy and all the issues we are having in Kenneth Ferrata's economy, you can say partly was because of inflation. All right,
because one of the main issues
which we imported. Now, I believe that tariffs can also lead to inflation, because if there's a global trade war, which I believe there will, the Chinese want to retaliate, the Europeans want to retaliate. What essentially that means is that inputs for manufacturing of everything will be more expensive. Now, once inputs are expensive, prices go up. So whereas in the first inflation cycle, it was caused by Janet Yellen's decision to cut rates, and that led to capital flight from within our countries. What's going to happen now is a tariff-induced inflation. Now, when you have inflation that is not accompanied by economic growth, you have stagnation. So my argument is that the world is stumbling into another financial crisis, economic crisis, because now nobody can speak to Trump. So we actually are in a difficult position. So even we sitting in Ghana here who say we're happy with our 2000s budget, we have to be very careful. Already he's put the plugs on USAID. Thankfully, IMF is not directly under US. So there's an arrangement where the IMF and World Bank, you can say the dominant players are still US and Europe, but it's not like the USAID. So he cannot cancel the World Bank with an executive order. But when I look at his mindset and where he's going, if he had the chance, he would do it. And that could even scatter our own economic development. So let's talk about Ghana issues. The truth is that one action of Trump can change everything in Ghana. I mean, a whole government in Ghana blamed Russia-Ukraine war for 2 years for its economic crisis. Do you understand? And until then, no people in Ghana have never heard of Ukraine, except for Shevchenko, the footballer. A lot of people didn't even know Ukraine was responsible for the bread they ate. So I feel like we need to pay closer attention to the Trump situation, the US, the Western world, all that's going on there, and also start forming an independent view of what kind of future we want. All right. And of course, the African Union, so many conflicts to deal with. whilst all that is going on, we still need to think of self-sufficiency in food at least. Because if you can't produce your own food, because you see, inflation in Ghana is driven by food inflation, and you can control food inflation if you grow more food, and even with that we import so much food. So if you look at our inflation breakdown, a lot of this it's
food inflation.
So I feel like
inflation is even higher than inflation a lot of the time.
We need to hear more about what all of this means for our economy. I'm not hearing that enough. All you hear is global outlook was good. They go for the pros budget. Oh, global outlook. They just give 2 or 3 paragraphs. No, this is more complex than that. I think we need to have more serious discussion of what is happening in the world for what Ghana, because Ghana is a small country. Ghana is not that independent. And let's not think that, look, 1 or 2 things can happen in the world and a lot of our news will pale in comparison. Touch wood 3 times. What if there's a world war? Where does that leave you? What if there's a travel ban imposed on all African countries? Where does that leave your relatives? Look at what COVID did. Problem is, we always assume everything is about what happens close to us until the big thing hits the fan. Then we are all in confusion. We may not be able to do anything about what Trump is saying or doing in the US. But there are so many things we should be doing here to protect ourselves. A lot of it requires investment in strategic sectors like agriculture. Look at ECG. Think about it. My last point. This ECG we discussed. I asked the ECG MD, what were you importing? Bro, they were importing cables. Not a problem. Transformers. Not a problem. Wooden poles? Yeah. Wooden poles?
Yeah.
Have you driven to the BA before?
Yes, conductors.
Teak trees are used for wooden poles. We have massive teak plantations in Ghana, from the Oti region, the Bono region, the Ashanti region. Why on earth are we importing wooden poles for electric poles? Why are we importing from which country? Do you get my point? You say you don't have FX. You drive to the north, there's vast amounts of land lying empty. Why isn't somebody in government saying, let's do teak plantations? Because the tree you use for electric pole is teak. Why don't you do that? Has anybody ever asked why we are importing teak or wood?
Bernard, let's not even talk about teak plantation. Why aren't they doing solar farms in some of these places we are not doing anything with? Good. That's another good use, because we can say that we have an we have energy supply issues. Let's do some solar farms and fix some of our issues, because the sun will never run out. By the time the sun runs out, we'll be long dead.
They say the technology for solar is initially expensive. Look, there are many companies that do imports of solar. But a lot of the countries that you import solar from, they also have programs that can help you to learn the technology. Okay. I believe that the technology of having our own solar is, as you said, very critical, because our energy security, we are not secure energy wise. You know why? Most of our energy, apart from the hydro and
non-renewable,
yes, so we have fossil fuels we have to burn. The US dollar is always a problem. As I talk to you, Mozambicans cannot import fuel or bread because the US dollar is scarce. So Trump can make a decision in US today. You may not have money to import finished product. As we sit here today, we do have oil fields that we produce crude,
but we don't refine it.
That's my point. So the priorities for a country that wants to be resilient is to say, okay, in 5 years' time, not only Central, which is owned by the Chinese, Tor must also work. Because if Tor works, even if you still import some finished product, you will have a semblance of stability with processing some of your crude, so that if there's even some challenge of conflict, you can still have finished product. A day is coming, you will not be able to even drive to work. Because, and again, look, a last point, I'm not a warmonger. Trade wars can lead to other wars. And whilst Mr. Trump has said he's a pacifist, he doesn't want the war in Ukraine and everything else, if you look at the posture of other superpowers, look, we could have many disruptions. So I just want to urge that let's not forget the most important things. Food self-sufficiency, energy security. These are critical. Food, if people can eat and move, a country can work. If people don't have food to eat, the only thing they have to eat is the leaders. So I don't want the government to take its mind and say, oh, the US, they are doing what they Trump. We shouldn't laugh. He can take 2 decisions. You study this. He can take 2 decisions. And in a month's time, you will not have fuel to import. Let's be very careful. Look at the way he spoke about South Africa. Oh, the way they are doing some bad things there.
Yes,
we are raising tariffs. His briefing on Africa is very poor. So
his
and
briefing on Africa is not poor. It's
led by Elon Musk.
It's his language and choice of words in reference to what he wants to talk about sometimes that needs work. But that is how he prefers to talk. But
you don't think it's because of it?
No, his briefing,
his worldview on the place.
Yes, I'm saying you're saying his briefing is poor.
But will his
briefing is not poor.
Are you sure?
Oh,
I think his briefing is poor, especially on South Africa.
No, his briefing is not poor.
We are not
You
faulting.
think
We are not.
his
Akuto,
briefing is not poor.
you see, I'm not faulting the quality of the bureaucracy in the US, but the nature of the man. Will he allow himself to be briefed?
Yeah, which is why I'm saying.
So you see, if the man will not listen, it's not about. We are not saying that U.S. foreign policy or U.S. intellectuals in the capital or wherever they are, the foreign ministry do not know what the issues are in Africa. Look at what he did with USAID. USAID, as far as American elite is concerned, is not just providing relief, but for them, it's also part of their influence, soft power, even intelligence gathering.
Yeah.
If his briefing on Africa was not that poor, why will he just pull the plugs on USAID in a week? Do you know the damage even it causes to America's own interest? So I'm saying that his briefing is poor.
No,
You know,
because
and you see, I want to say something quickly. I think that the South Africa thing, especially, there's what Elon Musk has also been pushing about South Africa, which is influencing him, which is why I'll say is poor, because he's repeating Elon Musk's talking points, and Elon Musk too has a certain agenda about South Africa. He's also trying to push. That's why I say I think for the rest of Africa it's fine because he's not listening to Elon Musk, but South Africa especially, I think there's a conflict.
Do we
there.
even know who is talking to Trump about Africa? Because if you listen to the things he said about the continent in the past, it's quite clear that he doesn't care much about the continent and that the people around him don't have that much interest. Which may be a good thing, because sometimes when somebody has interest in you, he may have bad intentions for you. But my point is that we have certain things we control. I'm not even here to talk about who talks to Trump or what. I am saying that as a country, there are certain things you must prioritize. We did back to your village. We need to become food self-sufficient. We need to have alternatives. I was talking about Mozambique today. They can't eat bread because they don't have dollar. Why can't they find an alternative to the flour they import from Ukraine and use it in their bread and change the taste of their people so that they can survive and eat that bread? Because if your people don't have food to eat and they don't have fuel to move, they can't do anything. And African leaders have always subjected their priority to another country. So president is elected, first week, take an inventory of the people who go and visit Mahama when he wins. How many of them are the people who produced food in Ghana for us to eat? All kinds of interest. Of course, he's a president, he must meet them. Those countries want to secure their interest. But the question is that he has a primary responsibility to us first. Go back to the news and watch. The first week he was appointed, every day somebody is in his office. What are they pushing? Who is pushing our agenda for food self-sufficiency? Who is pushing our agenda for fuel sufficiency? Who is pushing our agenda for better education for our children? Who is pushing that agenda? And why isn't the media pushing that? What I'm trying to say is that a lot of times you can get distracted by the politics of, Apenyumakin has said this, person has said that, and all those things. But trust me, if a government is clear in what it wants to achieve and is focused, it can do a lot. Even in very small, weak countries, if a government is determined to protect its people, to secure their future, and to feed them, it will do what it has to do. I don't think we've made the main thing yet. And you see, this government is still in the honeymoon stage. This is the best time to point out to them what they need to do. Because in a 2 years' time, when people are scrambling to replace the man, there'll be no reason. I think from 2023 in Ghana, there was no real thinking. It was more election 2024. Right? We are just in January. I'm praying that beyond the rhetoric, our leaders are actually taking a cue from what's happening in the US. I am worried. You don't seem that much worried.
Godfrey, I actually want to hear what you were
Yeah,
to say about the
if you like to not talk about it.
No, I want to hear what you wanted to say about the briefing because I disagreed on the South Africa point. I wanted to hear his counterpoint.
Yeah.
Not like, and I just wanted to hear his thoughts on it.
no, I'm just saying that the briefing will be given. It's just what he wants to do that is different.
Okay.
So you can have information. What you do with the information is up to you, especially if you're the one who makes the decision, who has power. You understand? And also determines what matters to him. I think basically the question has always been, what is Trump's ultimate objective? Isn't it?
Yes.
What did he say? Make America great again. That is his in his mind, he will do whatever it takes to make America great again. So sometimes I think he gets underestimated by the choice of words he uses. Yesterday was called Liberation Day. That's what you see. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It was yesterday. The official tag yesterday was Liberation Day for what the exercise he carried out. He spoke about the looming victory. It's a word that is very, very, very much used in Trump speeches. The victory of America. You understand? So if you talk about interest, what our interests are, what should the interests of other African countries be? It is what is his interest that matters to him. So all I'm saying is he has a briefing, but it is what he feels are paramount to American interest in his opinion.
Correct.
Not in the briefings or in the expert's opinion, but in his opinion.
So he can override
Exactly,
the briefing.
which is why even in his own country there is a lot of there will be, I haven't checked his approval ratings. You can check his approval ratings for me. But generally his approval ratings will be high. But in the realms, and that will be amongst the general populace.
Yes.
But in the realms of academia and the realms of policy makers,
They may not be happy with
there
him.
might be division, not necessarily all of them unhappy, but there will be division in what the ultimate objective will be. And if you look at the responses of a lot of the countries,
Yeah.
they are similar to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Look, Madam Van Leyden in EU says, well, we will watch and plan and initiate countermeasures. But they hint of negotiation. They say we are talking.
Yeah.
If you look at the Chinese, and the Chinese are like, I don't know of a civilization that knows the long game. They've had
They give you a long
they've
road,
had 2,000 years of practice
I tell you.
on playing the long game. So this game that is happening, you can move it to 100%.
Haven't seen the memes that Xi, how do you pronounce it?
Xi Jinping.
He does nothing and he still wins. It's a meme all
Yeah,
over
that's
the
what I'm saying,
internet. So
Yeah.
They will find their way
Yeah.
around this. There are a lot of countries that will be hit hard by this. But everybody's, if you look at this again, listen to the Australians on this matter. The Australians are saying, well, okay, we will find a way. Okay. So not everybody is up in arms about what happened, so-called Liberation Day yesterday. Everybody seems to be thinking around it as to how they can best
Yeah.
resolve the situation without escalating it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you listen again, you can
But
compare.
the Europeans say they'll retaliate.
Oh, they did the first time.
And the
on the
Chinese too
spirits.
have hinted they would.
On the spirits
Yeah.
already. But I see there are a lot of other impacts on this that will come back later. So for instance, if you look at online shopping, Americans do more online shopping than anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there are about 100,000 or so packages that get into America every day. Now, on some of these things that are coming in, they are coming from places like Vietnam, they're coming from China, they're coming
Thailand.
from Cambodia, they're coming from Thailand. They used to avoid the taxes. Now, those things are coming in. Now, if
So
you
there are so
shop,
many unexpected
if
consequences.
you
of
shop
this.
under $800, you were not paying a certain tax. They call it des minimis. Now that one is going to be removed because U.S. border control has to check every single item
My God.
to make sure on the cost of those things. Where would the cost be passed on?
Because the end
You see,
the
so
end user.
it's a long term.
I was checking something though. So Ghana's tariff charged for things bought from the US was just 17%. We are one of the lowest. And we have been slapped with just 10%. So we are part of the rest of the world who will have a 10% tariff slapped on things we send to the US. There are some pretty high numbers. So for example, Nigeria, their tariff for things from US is 42%, and US 27%. US has given them 14%, 27. Namibia, their tariff for US goods was 42. US has given them 21. So basically, US is saying, anybody above a certain percentage, I will give you half of what you give me. Algeria, things bought into US 59, so US has slapped a 30% on them. Lesotho had a 99% tariff on things from US, and US has slapped a 50% on them. Mauritius 80% for things into US has slapped 40 on them. So there's a method to this. So US's point is that when I send things to your country, I pay this amount of tariff. Ghana has a very low tariff compared to most. Ours is just 17. Therefore, we are going to suffer 10. I don't know what we export to the US, but the things we import.
Chocolates. The Hershey's chocolates, maybe the Hershey's chocolates people they get cocoa.
Let's look at something. So let's take Lesotho.
Yeah, Lesotho is 99% into US, so US has slapped 50% on them.
US last year purchased. The US primarily buys diamonds. They purchased roughly $500 million worth of diamonds yearly from Lesotho. How many people buy from the US in Lesotho?
Maybe they buy from South Africa more.
Yeah, and they surrounded by South Africa as well.
Yes, and here's the point. Lesotho, Namibia, South Africa, and I think Eswatini also, they are SACU, right? So they are trade block.
Yeah.
So when they impose taxes, they impose the same taxes. The percentages roughly are the same. You understand? So how is Lesotho's different, Namibia's different, South Africa's different, Eswatini's different?
That's a very good point.
How? So what you see? That's what I'm saying. That even if we could even touch the methodology,
he basically just said, I look at a country and how much they charge for things that we send to their country is high, and for a long time we haven't charged them anything. So we are going to give them at least half of what they charge us. So on paper that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, but even there are those who
but because they have more wealthy citizens, see, I'm trying to say something. Usually people would put a high tariff on things from America because America is America.
Yeah.
But if they start putting a tariff on what we send there, all of us will suffer.
Yes.
Because we assume that there are people that are a bit more affluent.
Yes.
But and the point is that general price levels are going to go up. Both in the US and other parts of the world. And we're all going to suffer for it. You know, we're all going to suffer for it. So somebody may buy you a laptop if our people also want to. Of course, 17% is one of the lowest that we charge for things coming from US. It's a normal.
What's the iPhone's largest market?
In terms of maker or buyer?
In terms of buying. You know where they make iPhones?
China.
Yeah, made in China, yes.
And they'll be shipped where? To that market.
That's why you are saying they are negotiating. You know, some of these things may not be on everything.
You see, because
No, I think it's blanket too.
No, but that's why they are negotiating. So they'll negotiate on specific. There are some specific
what
things.
What is the largest market for PlayStation?
It's probably the US.
But don't forget that, guys, don't forget that last week, the Korean people announced they're going to set up a huge manufacturing plant in the US. So part of this is to also get some of these companies that produce in China,
to get to the table.
Yeah.
No, to come. So in fact,
manufacture in the
so
US
there was a big Korean company.
Bring jobs.
So if, for example, I am Samsung and I have a large plant in Seoul, and I'm selling my phones to the US, and if impose a tariff on my products, if I come and set up a plant in Detroit, it will not attract the same tariff. Do you understand? So in a way, he is saying that we want to bring jobs into US. Don't forget, Trump's basic argument has been that jobs are being sent abroad. From the US abroad, and by imposing tariffs, the companies will take an economic decision. If US will give me a good place to set up business, even though labor costs may be high, I will still be able to manufacture at competitive cost in that country because I won't pay the tariff. And by so doing so, I've brought X% of jobs. So he's playing his politics with his.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That bottom line, in the end, he's looking out for his own, as underlined by his campaign promise of making America great again. The process of making America great again,
it's an interesting one.
It's the journey that we are currently on. But I take the points that you make largely. Everybody should be thinking about how, especially in our very unique situation, how we don't become overly reliant on
someone else,
on other countries for some of the things that we need. Look, when Burkina Faso said they were doing cereals, they placed a ban on cereals. We had to send somebody there to go and talk to Burkina Faso. The president had to tell his man Beblolate to go and with Ablakwa to go and have a conversation in Burkina Faso.
Meanwhile, we had 5
this
years
your cereal ban.
of
it's a problem.
5 years of planting for food and jobs, and yet, if Burkina Faso said they won't give us cereals, half of the people will be hungry. So we need to drill down, and I think the media needs to do a lot more, because when somebody says I've spent X amount of money on a thing,
But the planting for food and jobs, what have we not said?
No, I know.
Honestly.
I'm saying that there's been more like, for example, writing. Okay, so for example, if some people will come and do a proper analysis of 5 years of PFJ and how it has affected the price of grains and availability of grains using official statistics, and you have some point, so that we can have a more informed argument about whether it was successful or not, beyond NDC saying it was somewhere, MPB saying it was good.
No, but Bernard, on some of the things, and I am confidently saying this in the absence even of established data in front of me as we speak now, although there is data for it. PFJ was a horrible failure.
On the face of it.
Bernard, which glut have we had on which what?
True.
Livestock? On what? On which crop?
The major ones they mentioned, I think there was just one or two.
There
was a time that maize prices were a bit lower. I think there was a particular
for
period.
the amount of money sunk into PFJ.
Yeah.
If it works, you see some of the things, when the outcomes are real, you don't need data.
Yeah.
You will feel it
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, so for the amount of money sunk into what was a so-called flagship project like PFJ,
Yeah.
we can easily say it's a failure. 1D1F.
Oh my God.
Oh, Aloski.
Oh my
For the
God.
amount of money sunk into 1D1F,
Oh my God.
and where this country is, where we are talking 24-hour economy,
One village, one
and
dam.
one village, one. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't need any data to tell us that industrialization agenda
Yeah.
failed.
But you see, the reason I caution is that it's also political. So there needs to be a more objective review. So for example, if I'm the agric minister today, it's easy for me to say PFJ failed, but it's better for me to say, okay, let's set up a committee. Let's invite Professor Roger Canton. Let's invite the director of whatever, and let's review PFJ and give me how can I even improve it. Do you understand? So because for me, there's no point in just rubbishing something or endorsing something on the basis of just politics. You need the data. You get it? And that data is what will inform our policy going forward. That what have we invested in poultry and what can we do in addition? What tends to happen is that because of the way we do our politics, we rubbish everything the previous guy does and we start afresh. And we have only 4 years. And the world is not waiting for us. Because in some countries like China, they've had 10, 20, 30-year plans. So we cut our nose to spite our face. We need to find a way of objectively assessing government policies. So we all agree that e-levy is bad. Let's jettison it. But there are some things we are not still sure of, which is where there's a thin line. So for example, road minister, he's saying this road, the contract has been given, the road has not been done. Almost every ministry is talking about what I've found and how Samuel George, he did the same thing. And I'm saying, you see, there's a certain thing we must do where we must also do it beyond just the politics. Because at the end of the day, we suffer.
Yeah.
If you spend 5 million or 5 billion on a thing, find out which aspect has worked so that you can improve it. But if you are going to start afresh, and now there's no money anywhere from anybody, okay, and I'm saying that our politics gets in the way of informed policy discourse. And we don't have the luxury because we are not a very big or powerful country, which is why our leaders must work extra hard to get things moving. All right. So we'll see what Mr. Trump's policies will do for us.
I want to say one thing. Thinking about this, I'm wondering how Trump's stuff is being received by the other politicians in America. I know right now the Republicans are, they are very in step with him because he's the leader of the party, quote unquote. But what if they don't win the next election?
Well, his approval ratings are falling, right? Trump approval falls to 43%, lower since returning to office. So, and this is in line also with his tariff.
I saw something about
so
60% of Americans think tariffs will hurt the economy and that. But I'm just saying, if the Republicans don't win the next election and a Democrat comes, how are they going to respond to all the changes he's done? Would they continue to go along with it? Would they try and reverse it? And would they be able to reverse it? And the reason I bring this up is, for the longest time, Americans have believed that it's our job to run the world. It's what we have to do as
we are the
policeman. We run things, we control things. Trump's doing this and basically saying we don't want to protect anybody. We don't want to be interested. How is that going to affect the next president if they come in and they feel like, I think Trump has made a misstep? And I think that's the scariest part.
It's an interesting point. Let me add to that. I think that American elite generally are liberal in the way they see their foreign policy. And Trump's views are a bit opposite to that. So the view of Trump being saying American exceptionalism, we are America, we don't have to go and do what, we are just on our own. I think even in the high echelons of the Republican Party, they don't agree with that. Because let's people like Bolton. So generally, at the American intelligentsia, they believe in what has happened since 1945. We are the world's policeman, we must remove bad people. If they are not our friends, we'll fight them. And we are the stability or the instability. Yeah. So it's a good question. It's a big test for the Republican Party. In fact, last week, when the thing leaked on the Signal, there were a couple of senators in the US. And, you know, because the work I do, sometimes you'll be sent links to say
certain things. Yeah.
There will be like a panel discussion open to some media in the House discussing the implications of something. It's open. There are key Republicans who are worried about where this is going. But the truth is that Trump now is the Republican Party. So, and this is the thing that tends to happen in politics. If you play along and allow a bully to have his way for a long time, you can't really do much about it. So, you have made a very important point. The Republican Party in 4 years or 3 years may be in a very difficult position because they've been forced to go along with certain policies that they know will not inure their long-term benefit. Although I need to say that if Trump's gamble works, he will become very powerful, because if, from the calculation I make, some of the companies in Asia move their factories to the US
and jobs,
and he moves them to key swing states. Don't forget, Michigan, the auto companies suffered drastically from the way they couldn't compete with the Japanese. So let's assume he gets Samsung to set up 2 or 3 big factories
Honda
in Detroit.
Maybe even Honda.
Do you understand? And then he picks maybe a few of the states that are having blue collar workers who have lost their jobs and brings 3 or 4 big factories back there. I mean, he will just be prepared the way for Vance. Yeah. So he's taking a gamble. And I am not sure the outcome, because he may. And the other thing about Trump is that people think he doesn't. I actually think he's actually smarter than people give him credit for.
Oh,
very, very smart.
A long time ago.
Yeah. He's a very smart guy.
No, the truth is that these tariffs are negotiation. They are bullying tactic. Yep. He's basically trying to bully everyone to do a certain thing. Yeah. So that one I get, but I'm just saying that if it doesn't work, and the Democrats have to come, and in their head, this guy has messed up and we have to fix it, where does everyone go?
But don't rule out the fact that he could actually. We are not even sure he's going to go.
Yeah, because
you see, that's the thing. You see, don't.
Yeah, but
I'm saying that with Trump, nothing is given. Don't assume that.
Oh no, I'm not assuming. I'm just.
He may not go. He may even stay for another 4 years.
He'll go.
No. I think
that's not something the Americans will give up.
I think the way Americans believe in their constitution and things, it's going to, for what he'll have to do to get that third term. I think it will basically he will destroy the US to get it. He's either
resetting the world. Like he's a reset. You know what reset means?
You see, no. Do
you know what reset means?
No. You see, I feel like where you are going with
this. He says media is fake news. He's attacked. The only thing he has not attacked is the Constitution.
And that's
he can basically take anything on and win.
Saying, Bernard, once he attacks the Constitution, it's a whole different ball game.
He will not attack the Constitution.
No, that's
he will just give his own interpretation to it.
No, but
and then he will tell you that everybody who has a different view is mad or an enemy of America.
But the Constitution is very clear about the term limits.
Let me tell you something.
It's very clear.
Democracy does not work when you have uninformed citizens. And the fact that somebody speaks English doesn't mean he's informed or educated.
I understand.
So I think, I'm going to say something very strong. The average educated Ghanaian has a better global worldview than the average educated American.
That one is true. They don't care about anyone but themselves. That one is true.
And that's a problem.
That one is true.
So now, if you lead people like that, who have this sense of we are superior to everybody else, and we know more than everybody else because our country is richer and more powerful. The fact that our country is richer or powerful doesn't mean you have more sense.
Yeah, but Ben, you see, I'm saying
you can also be a victim of a demagogue, but you don't know.
But you see, that's what I'm saying. That
so you can go for a third
I'm saying him attacking the Constitution, the institution. Like, I don't think you can run it politically in that way. It's very difficult because you have to remember that it means that the whole Supreme Court is going to have to change.
Okay, but what if there's war? Do you remember that in Roosevelt's time, Franklin? Because of war, they had to halt elections. All right. So, and again, I'm just talking. What if there's a war situation?
But if there's a war, that's a world war. That's a very different. That's an extreme.
But right now, if there's a war, that's
an extreme circumstance. So for him to just go and run an election, No, Bernard, for him to run an election for a third term, I'm telling you, the US will never recover.
Read history.
I've read a lot of history.
If there's war in the world, anything is possible.
No, and it's the same way that
we have to take difficult decisions in Ghana and also pray a lot.
No, Bernard, if you are talking about this, it's the same way that Caesar destroyed Rome by this same. I wanted to have absolute power. There's certain lines when you cross, the notion of the state changes completely.
You see, you believe that the U.S. institutions are enough strong buffers against the foibles or the excesses of one person. I think they will be tested. They will be tested strongly.
And
because, for example,
I don't disagree.
Somebody is convicted as a felon, yet he gets on the ballot and wins fairly. All right, he loses an election. He says he was robbed. People go in his name to attack the number one symbol of their democracy, and he's still leading the country.
Bernard, I understand all of that, but I'm saying that that fundamental change to the US, I don't think it's going to be a fundamental change for good. I think that if Trump gets a third term,
it will be.
I think within 50 years, not even 50, I think within 30 years, the US empire will be done.
Yeah,
that's basically what is going to happen. And I think that a lot of people in the US will recognize that and be like, no, if we let this happen, the country will never. That's my reasoning behind it. I think there's too much vested interest in not having this idea that basically one man is king. Because the whole idea of the US was that one man cannot be king. The country is built on that principle.
Right,
so for him to come and subvert that principle
it will be
is completely different in their context.
We should just prepare and also pray. That's all I would say. As for you, you know too much. We are running away.